you're the master of the budget, so briefly, let's go through the plan. The Obama camp says, independent groups say, if you cut those tax rates for everybody 20%, it costs $5 trillion over 10 years. True?
Not in the least bit true. Look, this just goes to show if you torture statistics enough, they'll confess to what you want them to confess to. That study has been so thoroughly discredited. It wasn't even a measurement of Mitt Romney, his policy. Here's what we're saying.
Well, how much would it cost?
It's revenue neutral. It doesn't cost $5 trillion.
I'm just talking about the cut, and we'll get to the deductions, but the cut in tax rates.
The cut in tax rates is lower all Americans' tax rates by 20%.
How much does that cost?
It's revenue neutral.
Well, it's not revenue neutral unless you take away the deductions.
That's where I'm asking you,
and we're going to get to that in a second. The first half, lowering the tax rates. How much does that cost? $5 trillion?
No. Look, I won't get into a baseline argument with you because that's what a lot of this is about. We're saying limited deductions so you can lower tax rates for everybody. Start with people at the higher end. Here's the way it works. I've been on the Ways and Means Committee for 12 years. Both parties, Republicans and Democrats, have junked up the tax code with so many giveaways and special interest tax breaks. What we're saying is you keep your money in your pocketbook, in your business, in your family in the first place. The way it works today is you send more of your money to Washington, and then if you do what Washington approves of, you can have some of it back. We're saying keep it in the first place. And every time we've done this, whether it was Ronald Reagan working with Tip O'Neill, the ideas from the Bowles-Simpson Commission on how to do this, there's been a traditional Democrat and Republican consensus. Lowering tax rates by broadening the tax base works, and you can.
But I have to
let me just tell you.
You haven't given me the math.
No, but well, I don't have the it would take me too long to go through all of the math, but let me say it this way. You can lower tax rates by 20% across the board by closing loopholes and still have preferences for the middle class for things like charitable deductions, for home purchases, for health care. So what we're saying is people are going to get lower tax rates, and therefore they will not send as much money to Washington, and they'll keep it and decide for themselves.
All right,
when we've done this, we've created economic growth.
If, just suppose, that the doubters are right, President Romney takes office, and the math doesn't add up.
First of all, we've run the numbers. I've run them in Congress. They do. We've got about 5 other studies that show that you can do it this way.
Okay, but let's assume it doesn't. The question is, what's most important to Romney? Would he scale back on the 20% tax cut for the wealthy? Would he scale back and say, okay, we're going to have to raise taxes for the middle class? I guess the question is, what's most important to him in his tax reform plan? If
keeping
the numbers
tax rates down. By lowering tax rates, people keep more of the next dollar that they earn. That matters. That is incentives. That's pro-growth policy. That creates 7 million jobs. And what should go first?
So that's more important than...
That's more important than anything. And more importantly, it's not what deductions are in the tax code, but it's who gets them. And don't forget that the higher income people have a disproportionate amount of the loopholes that they use. So when you close a tax write-off or a tax shelter for a higher income person, more of their income is subject to taxation so you can lower tax rates.